I always get confused.
I don't know if the
Who's
mic's, I
first?
don't know if the mic's on, Rob's
Love
mic.
yourself.
Okay.
I don't know if the mic's on for the computer or how
like to
don't
call
either.
to order the Information Committee meeting of the City Council of the City of Rapid City for Wednesday, the 23rd of April, 2008. Maggie, can you take a roll call for us, please?
Johnson, Weifenbach,
Here.
Boyker,
Here.
Hadcock. Here. Olson. Here. Okrepke. LaCroix.
Here.
Kroger. Here. Chapman.
Here.
Hurlbut.
Thank you. We have two presentations on our agenda today, one by KL Process from Dave Litzen, and I'm not sure if they're going to be here today, and the other is a presentation by the Black Hills Business Development Center, and we'll turn it over to Jim Meyerhouse, who's the CEO of the Business Development Center, better known as the Incubator here in town, and I think we've got a couple of the tenants out there, one from Sealock and then the other one from Evans and Sutherland, but I'll turn it over to Jim Meyerhouse and let him do introductions. Jim? Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate being able to come and talk about some new technologies that are in the incubator. Before I introduce them, I'd like you to just know, just for your information, this morning I sat down and we started the design process on another company coming to town. This one is coming from Norway with Russian technology to make a substitute for rebar. They spin it, they are going to melt volcanic rock, basalt, and spin it into rebar. Its process has been used throughout Russia for a number of years for highways and bridges and that type of thing. The beauty of it is it's 5 times stronger than steel rebar. It also is non-corrosive, and it's about half the weight. So consequently, there's some labor savings, obviously, in the whole of it all. They're coming full aware that they're going to open a demonstration plant here in the incubator, a small one, just to show product and that type of thing. And knowing full well that there's standards in the U.S. that would have to be changed before they could use their product in highways and bridges, but they can get into the preform concrete side of the world, and they can spin it in whatever configuration one would need. For instance, as you look at a highway, they can spin that whole system that they put stakes and pins and wire on that goes into a piece of highway construction. They can spin that into a 20 by 20 web, and one person can pick it up and lay it on the highway. So it's that, and it has all the properties of rebar and all of that. So we're excited about that. We think that's good. I have another California company that coming as well, but we're not as far along with it as we are with this one. So, without further ado,
Jim, before you do introductions, just a quick question about that. Understanding that we haven't changed the standards in this country yet, is there a demonstration company like them anywhere else in the United States doing this?
There
So
are
this is a
not.
first then?
This is the first. They ended up with this process coming out of the Ukraine, and it's worth just a quick second here. Let's figure out why they got here. First off, it was one of the members of the Norwegian engineering team was a graduate of School of Mines. Read about the incubator in the alumni news, knew that Tech had some expertise in concrete and that type of thing. So they came to town. He talked his group into coming here. They went down, met with Deanna Lean and also with Pat Burchell at the U.S. Bank. And they said, well, you need to come out here and they had intended to do that, but they reinforced that. So long story short, their project engineer is here on the ground, moved here. We helped them with their visas, got them here. Met with a contractor today, and they intend to only be in there. They want to be out in 3 years. They want to build a plant after that would be major production plant. So it looks like a lot of good opportunity. They'll start with about 10 employees, probably max out in the incubator of about 20, and then from there full-fledged plant would be somewhere above 100 to do all that manufacturing. So first today is we have a presentation by Rob Christensen, Evans and Sutherland. A group out of Salt Lake, the company is, and I'll let Rob tell us all about what he does. Rob is a graduate of Tech and went off to Utah and came home. And his partner is from Lusk, Wyoming. And so they're his partner at work. And so without that, Rob?
Thanks. A little background on me. I graduated from the School of Mines in '95 and went to the University of Utah for my master's degree. Started working for a company named Evans and Sutherland and did my PhD at the University of Utah as well. My wife and I decided we wanted to move back to Rapid City, and for several years I've been looking at possible means to get back. And there's not a lot of opportunities in my field of specialization. So in a conversation with the CEO of Evans and Sutherland, he decided he'd let me move back and work something out, possibly involving some commuting every week back and forth to Salt Lake City. Well, I'd been in contact with Larry Simonson at the School of Mines over the years, and he, on a visit, took me over to the incubator. We met with Jim Meyerhouse and Bob Demersman. And the information they showed me there, I took back to Salt Lake City and showed, look at this place, could move right in, open up an office that has some subsidies to help out with rent and everything. And they loved that idea, so we went ahead with that, and I became the first tenant of the incubator. And then within a few months, I hired another engineer, a School of Mines graduate with a master's in mechanical engineering. And now I'll show a little bit about what Evans and Sutherland does, and then tell you more about what we're doing at the incubator. So Evans and Sutherland was the world's first computer graphics company. It was started by two professors at the University of Utah in 1969. And it's in the University of Utah Research Park, which is a beautiful spot right next to the university. And it was actually the first company into their research park. And I like it now because Evans and Sutherland is the first company into the incubator on the School of Mines campus. Evans and Sutherland is a world-leading supplier of visual systems. And what is a visual system? The goal of visual system is to make as realistic images as possible. And one of our major markets is flight simulators. And this just shows some of the imagery that was created for flight simulators. And it's trying to simulate things, atmospheric conditions for the pilots to look at. In this one, you can see the runway lights are sort of blooming in the fog, and these are things that the pilots might see. So the goal is just to make everything as realistic as possible. And the pilot who's flying your plane out of Rapid City Regional, it might be the first time he's ever flown that plane. All of his training on that plane has been done on a simulator. So for all of us, it's good for this training to be as realistic as possible. And this shows a simulator. The cockpit is real. Everything inside is a real cockpit. And then the difference is out the window is projected imagery instead of the real world. And then many times these flight simulators are placed on motion platforms, which can rotate them and shake them to try to simulate the motion the pilot would feel during flight. The three parts of the visual system then are the database, where they design the graphics, everything the pilot's going to see when he's flying, different types of aircraft or ships or landing strips at different air bases. The image generator then is a computer that specializes in rendering all this data. So if a pilot turns right, the correct imagery is put up there. In addition, there can't be any delay or lag in the time it takes to present that imagery. If the pilot turns his joystick and nothing happens for a second, then all those visual cues are wrong and the training's not very successful. So the image generator has to be very fast and present the data right away. And then the third part is a precision projector, which displays the imagery for the pilot, and that's the part that my group in the company works on, are the precision projectors. So several years ago, we were working with the Air Force Research Lab, and they have a simulator called the M2 DART, and this shows for a fighter pilot, the pilot needs to be able to see in front of him, above him, and behind him, whereas a commercial pilot is only looking out the front window. So in this simulator, they have screens all around the pilot, and each screen has a projector. So the Air Force said, what would it take to make this simulator more realistic? And you want a higher resolution projector. So what kind of resolution are we talking? So if you look at this on a standard eye chart, the eye doctor is trying to see if you can tell the difference between an E and a P or a B. And each of these elements subtend 1 arc minute, where an arc minute is 1/60th of a degree. So if you can resolve a black and white, you can tell the difference there on this eye chart, you know, the black lines versus the white lines, then you're 20/20, if each of those elements subtends 1 arc minute. What that means to the Air Force Research Lab then is if we could put up enough pixels on their screen so that each pixel subtended 1 arc minute, then that's enough pixels to put up an eye chart. It'd be as good as you can see. More pixels than that would be wasted because it'd be smaller than the eye could see. So we started looking at that. And a standard laptop is SXGA resolution with 1280 by 1024 pixels, so 1.3 million pixels. You've all heard of HDTV. The best HDTV is 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels, so 2.1 million pixels. There's higher resolution computer monitors that'll do QXGA, 3.1 million pixels. And after we started this project, just a few years ago, Sony came out with a projector, a quad HDTV that is 8 million pixels. Well, what we needed for the Air Force was 21 million pixels, 10 times more than HDTV. And we would have 8 of these projectors around them, 1 on each screen. So that'd be 80 HDTV projectors. So our goal then was to make a projector with 10 times more pixels than HDTV. So to start with, we looked at existing technologies, and the CRT projector is the oldest technology. That's what all the old TVs are, the really thick ones, those work off of CRT. And what's happening there is an electron beam is being shot in this direction. It's controlled by electronics, and it does a raster scan across the phosphor screen. When it hits the phosphor, it excites the photons are released, and that's where your light comes from. So with the CRT projector, you just have a flying beam that's doing 1 row at a time like this down the screen, and it does that for a TV basically 24 times a second. Well, to extend that now to the HDTV, we would need to make that CRT go much, much faster. I mean, not the HDTV, to the 21 million pixels. Much, much faster, and the beam would have to focus much smaller. And CRTs were on their way out anyways. That just wasn't able to get to that high resolution. So DLP is another technology you might have heard of for HDTVs. That's out of Texas Instruments. They're really marketing it. They want everyone to know those 3 letters, DLP. They have a NASCAR team and everything. And they use a technology called MEMS, Micro Electrical Mechanical Systems. And what that is it's very miniature parts. We're talking on the scale of microns, where a micron is 1,000th of a millimeter. And what they do for HDTV, for their 2.1 million pixels, they have 2.1 million tiny mirrors. Each mirror is 13 microns square. And that mirror it's on a wafer. It's made just like Intel makes their processors and that sort of thing. That mirror has 2 states. It can tilt one direction or the other. So down here is kind of showing that. The mirror is either in the green state or the black state. So when you want to turn a pixel on, you start out, this is how the projector works. You start out with light here. It shines through some optics. It goes through what's called a color wheel. Because in light, the 3 primary colors are red, green, and blue. From those, you can make white or any other color. So the light goes on, hits the mirrors here. If you want that pixel to be on, then the lens is in its green state. The light goes through the lens and out to the screen, and that pixel's on. If you want that pixel to be off, the mirror's in its black state, and the light will miss the lens, and that pixel is off. And if you want it somewhere in between, like 50% gray or whatever, then the mirror switches back and forth very fast, half on, half off. So that's how a DLP works, okay? And these are available in projectors and HDTVs. You've probably seen commercials for them on TV before. So if you look at that, it took them a long time to get that up to HDTV. They started out with lower resolutions, and they actually are doing some tricks even to get it to HDTV now. So to scale that up to 21 million pixels, there's going to be all sorts of yield problems on the wafers, And it's just not feasible for us to take this technology and scale it up to where we need to be. If it was that easy, they would have already done it. So another technology, and you'll see this on HDTV, there's a lot that use either LCD or LCOS, which is liquid crystalline silicon. You don't see the liquid crystalline silicon as much, but it's actually a better technology. It's a little more expensive. And liquid crystal and liquid crystalline silicon work similar. In this case, now you have a projection lamp, again, sending the light through illumination optics, but now you have a polarizing prism. Light has polarization states, so this one's starting out with random polarization. This prism's only going to let one polarization through. So light goes through, half of it bounces off here, half of it passes through here, and now we have polarized light. So now instead of having a DLP with these little mirrors, we have a liquid crystal cell. And the liquid crystal cell, again, you can control each of the 2.1 million pixels. And they actually rotate, they can rotate the polarization of light. So now if you want one pixel to be on, you rotate its polarization, it comes back. Now since its polarization has changed, it bounces off this optic and goes through the projection lens and out to the screen. If you want that pixel to be off, then you don't change the polarization on that pixel. Then it goes back through here, goes off this parabolic reflector, comes back through, gets recycled, and it tries again. So whereas the DLP did it with mirrors, changing light here, there, this does it with a liquid crystal, which changes the polarization. And again, you've got this 2D array with 2.1 million pixels, and to scale it up to 21 million pixels, they just can't get there yet. So having reviewed the basic technologies, we learned we had to come up with a totally new display technology, and ours is called the ESLP, Evans and Sutherland Laser Projector. It's a fundamental display technology for human visual performance. Also, in addition to that high resolution, we wanted to have what we call the ideal pixel. If you ever look closely at a screen, if you were to look at the screen up there, you'll see that LCD and DLP actually have what they call a screen door effect, and if you look, you can see a little grid on the screen, and that's because the mirrors can't be totally active. They have to have a little gap between the other mirrors, and the same with the liquid crystals. They have a little gap for the electronics, the electrodes to control each one of them. So if you look closely on the screen, you can see those gaps in there, and that takes away from the quality of the picture. And here shows the raster for the CRT. You can actually see the space between the rows as it scans. So the perfect pixel would then have none of those, and that was one of our goals for our projector as well. So our projector was based on another MEMS technology. Instead of DLP, it's called GLV, grating light valve. This was invented by a professor at Stanford. He now lives in Jackson Hole. He consults with our company, and he has a small company there that specializes in this MEMS technology. Evans and Sutherland owns the license for the GLV in simulation and planetarium markets. Sony owns the license for commercial products right now. So instead of using mirrors and reflection, we use what are called ribbons and diffraction. Diffraction is something you see if you look on your credit card at the hologram there. That's from diffraction. You're seeing color just from a different spacing in a grating on there. Also, if you look at the color in a hummingbird's wings, that's not actually from pigments in the wings. That's from a diffraction pattern on the wings. So we're using that property of light in our device. So this shows 1 pixel for us uses 6 ribbons. In this state, all the ribbons are the same. None of them are deflected, and that's going to be a dark pixel. Now, in this case, we can deflect every other pixel, and now we've formed a diffraction grating, which is going to affect what happens to the light. And this video shows what's going on. This shows a wafer with a bunch of arrays on it. Our device just makes 1 column of light at a time. So instead of doing a 2-dimensional array like the DLP and DMD, we do 1 column and scan across, and we can control the ribbons like that where they flex down. So when the light comes down, if you're viewing it from this axis, there's no change in angle. It goes in and out at the same angle. But now if we rotate it and look at it the other angle, we'll see that the diffraction changes the angle. So in this case, it behaves just like a mirror. The light goes straight back, and this would be a dark pixel. Now when we deflect some of the ribbons, you get diffraction, which is caused by interference. The light that travels farther gets half a wave out of phase with the other light and causes cancellation going straight back, and you get these orders, they're called, where the diffracted light travels. And this shows if we want to go from a bright to a dark or dark to bright. We just change the amount of deflection. This illustration down here tried to explain it. For 1 pixel, if you have the light come in and that pixel is off, then it goes right through here, where the red dots show the light we allow through the system. So that light didn't make it through the system. Now if we turn that pixel on, it goes through, and you have the -1 aura and the +1 aura. They go through the collection system, and they would make it onto the screen. So now this is showing all the light hitting a full column, and some pixels on, some pixels off. To give you an idea how small these are, this is a photo from a scanning electron microscope, and this one was cut in half to do a study. So you can see why we call them ribbons. They just spring all over. So this dimension of one ribbon from here to here is 3.7 microns, where a micron, again, is a thousandth of a millimeter. And they're about 200 microns in that direction. And the deflection of them is only 200 nanometers. So it's 200 nanometers, and it's 200 microns long. So it's deflecting a thousandth of its length. So it's barely even moving. So there's no issues with fatigue or anything like that. In addition, because it's moving so slightly, they can go really, really fast, much faster than DLP. And DLP is already much faster than LCD or LCOS. So we take advantage of them being able to go so fast by just producing one column at a time, and then we have a scan mirror that sweeps the whole column across. So 60 times a second, we're sweeping a whole column across to form an image. And you can see the advantages. With the CRT, it was trying to do 1 pixel at a time, so it had to go really, really fast to do every row. Well, now we're doing a whole column, so we only have to go once in that time. So we don't have to be as fast as a CRT would have to be. On the other hand, we're just making one column of pixels, so we only have to make 4,000 pixels. Whereas to do this with a 2D array like a DLP or an LCOS, you would need 21 million pixels. So we're sort of in between, and by doing that, we're avoiding the problems they both have, and now we're able to achieve this ultra-high resolution. We do 4,000 pixels in one column, and then we scan 5,000 pixels the other way, and that gives us our 21 million pixels. So we started down this road. Everything's going well. We've got the GLV. Now, because the array is so small, it's just the one-dimensional array, it's hard to focus all the light onto that. So we can't use a traditional arc lamp like most projectors use. So we required lasers for our projectors. And turns out no one made visible lasers in the power that we needed. So ENS started their own laser development, and now we have some of the highest power visible lasers available. Unfortunately, they are much more expensive than we'd like. And right now, our projectors sell for over $1 million each. We sell them to in-flight simulators and also high-end planetarians. But there's a new movement with low-cost lasers now becoming available. And these low-cost lasers are targeting things like this phone here. They call them pocket projectors or pico projectors. You take out your cell phone, you say, hey, look at this picture, and you shine it here, and it forms a nice picture there. And that's what they're showing here. Okay. So we started working with these low-cost laser companies. One of them's out of California. We've been working with them, and their cost model was by end of 2007 to have these down to $50 each for a red, green, and blue set. Our lasers right now cost us over $100,000 each. So granted, we'd have to use multiple sets of their lasers to get the power we needed, but still, it was much less than we have. So we started down that road, but they ran into a problem last fall with red, it was kind of funny to us because red was the easiest with our technology, it was the hardest with their technology. So they stalled, and everything's been delayed about a year. But that's one of the things we're working for now, is to include these lower cost lasers in our projector to decrease the cost of our projectors. So in addition to flight simulators, we also do digital theaters. If any of you have been to the Griffith Observatory in LA, they just did a huge renovation there, and they installed our projectors in their system. And as I said, they sell for over $1 million each. We have them installed in Japan, China, England, and the United States. And right now, all the high-end planetariums, the really showcase places, are going towards our projectors, but we have had some reliability issues. And of course, the cost is prohibitive. So we're trying to go to these lower cost lasers, which will bring the price down and also increase reliability. At the same time, then we're trying to get down into lower-end consumer markets. It'd be a long time before we get into HDTV type, but there's still other sort of mid-range applications where we're trying to get to. So the ENS Rapid City Design Center, our goal there, we're an expansion office, and our mission is the rapid development of new display products. And by moving out of Salt Lake and moving here, I've been able to concentrate more on R&D, not worry more about customer relations and just the day-to-day problems they have there. So far, everything's gone really well. They like how quickly we're able to work on new things here. We've hired one engineer, as I said. We sort of slowed down because of the low-cost lasers got delayed about a year, so that sort of delayed everything for us. And we're still waiting for those prices to come down. Then we're going to go into more and more products. And I hope to hire more people here eventually. We're working with a machine shop here in town. Interesting story about them. When I was talking with Bob Demersman and Jim Meyerhouse about what we were doing and what we need, I think it was the same week Kevin Rowell had stopped by for help with his new machine shop. So they put us in touch, and Kevin's been doing tons of fabrication work for us here. So just having that center there on the School of Mines campus, not only did Larry Simonson from School of Mines bring me over, then while I was there, I talked to Kevin Rowell. So it's been a great nexus for us all to come together. And an exciting development that will help us is Mitsubishi has announced that their laser HDTV will be available in Q3 2008. They've had it at the trade shows for the last 2 years, but they've never set a date. Now they're setting a date for production. And what that's going to do for us is going to pump up the volume on those low-cost lasers for the HDTVs, and then we'll be able to use those low-cost lasers for our ultra-high resolution projectors. Any questions?
Rob, we do. We'll go to Karen Olson.
Thank you, Rob, for being here. That's great. I think the key that should be noted is the relationship with the School of Mines and the interest in the quality of life that Rapid City has. And so I think these two things intersect in a really positive way, and glad for your presentation.
Thanks.
Rob, I have a question. What do you see ENS looking like in the future in Rapid City? I mean, do you see just expansion to have a few engineers on staff, or do you see some larger production company building relationships with other companies in the area? I mean, what do you think that will look like?
I think in the next few years we'll stay more in the R&D prototype stuff. So I don't think we'd go into any type of large production or manufacturing, but we are doing quite a bit even on the prototyping side of it now with Precision Technology. You know, they're machining a lot of our parts, and we do small assembly here, just the two of us now, but it's possible we could do small amounts, but it'd be mostly just by the engineers themselves, not going into a high volume.
Another question, as you were giving the presentation, I couldn't help but to think of if we do something at the DUSEL, that somehow I see a relationship establishing between ENS and what they will be able to do up there.
That's a good point. One of the things I didn't mention is, in addition to flight simulators and planetarium, which are more entertainment, why do we need more pixels? And it's information, really. If you think about a doctor looking at an x-ray or whatever, he wants the best resolution he can have. Now, he could zoom in and look at a very small spot and see what's going on, but it's much better if he has a large display with all this information. And they use this visualization for all types of things. Oil companies use it for exploration. They look at their seismographs and everything like that, and they want to visualize it. Military forces have power walls or command centers where they want information up there, all these different screens, and the more pixels, the more resolution, the better. So possibly something at DUSEL could work in that manner.
And then my last question is the new costs, the laser.
Mm-hmm.
What would be, I mean, if you worked out the details on the red, what would be the magnification? I mean, could someone who does presentations for a living, instead of buying some sort of projector unit to travel with, could you see them with this and then being able to project something as large as this from that?
I don't think they're going quite that big yet, because they would need more lasers to get the brightness. So it's more of with just a few people for the pocket or pico projectors. But in the future, something like that would be possible. And definitely they are getting smaller and smaller.
Sure. Rob, thank you. I don't see any other lights from council members. Thank you.
With that, then we'll have Pat Kozak talk about CLOC and carbon sequestration. And Pat will give you a different view of some things we're doing. That's
For me.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having us here today to talk. Let me get this set up here real quick. So my background, like Rob's, I'm a graduate of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. And of all things, geology. I came up here in 1995 to do paleontology and work in the Badlands, looking at Cenozoic and mammals. And I've come a long way through some remote sensing and a few other things to now doing environmental trading and carbon sequestration and storage. So Pat Zimmerman, whose name you see on this presentation, is Dr. Zimmerman. He was the director of the Institute of Atmospheric Sciences from 1998 till 2006, I believe. He stepped down to help form this company at the School of Mines. So we are a local started company who came out of an idea funded here, and I'll go through that a little bit. We are supported, and we're supported in our initial startups by the South Dakota Governor's Office. Governor Janklow at the time actually pushed through the appropriation to start who we are by developing the process. We've since been supported by discussions and other things from Jim Meyerhouse, Genesis Innovation Fund, and the Black Hills Business Development Center. Along the way, we've also gotten funding from USDA and the U.S. Department of Energy under the regional carbon sequestration projects. And now we're a wholly owned subsidiary of another company that we've licensed our technology to develop the company we have, and I'll go into that a little bit. The history of us, we were developed at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology by the Institute of Atmospheric Sciences. Dr. Zimmerman came from the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder to head the Department of Institute of Atmospheric Sciences up there, and through a conversation about 1999 with Governor Janklow, wanted to figure out a way to add value back to South Dakota agriculture in a way that was a true value add. So you weren't giving something back to the farmer in terms of a subsidy or something else, a marketable idea. And the idea came off of sediment credits for a way to stop erosion and sediment control in the White, the Missouri, and other places where you're getting damming and siltation. From that, we generated a proposal, went to the governor. It was funded by the state to develop CELOC. What CELOC was developed as is an agricultural-based system that we can, by looking at management practices of farmers and agricultural stakeholders, ranchers, and others, we can determine and model very accurately how much soil carbon they are storing based on their management practices, being able to quantify that, then have an independent third party verify that and sell that as a greenhouse gas offset in a market. Well, the idea came out in 1999. We put our applications for patents in 2002 and initially tried to roll this out as a business, and we're told we had already missed the boat and that the greenhouse gas market was already solved, there wasn't going to be anything. Well, if any of you have met Dr. Zimmerman in the past, he's a little stubborn and a lot focused and directed, and we held out and pushed through it and had some ongoing discussions with Jim and others on ways to develop this and trying to take it commercial. What happened was we went ahead and got developed a company called CELOC Incorporated and licensed the intellectual property that was developed at the School of Mines from the state to have an exclusive sublicense. So our patents technically are held by the state of South Dakota. We have an exclusive license for those use of those patents in commercial industries across the board. So it's really an interested stakeholder in the state and development through the school. We then in 2006 ran into a company called Evergreen Energy, which at the time was called KFX Incorporated. They're a clean coal processing company based out of Denver, but originally they're out of Gillette. Been around in the hills for a long time. Some of the founders is Ted Venners, who has bounced up and back in the hills and regions for a long time. He's born in Plankington. And came to us to talk about ways we could quantify CO2 savings from their coal refining process as a way to clean coal. They basically have a refinery that reduces the amount of moisture in Powder River Basin coal which allows it to burn more efficiently in a power plant, thereby reducing the amount of CO2 that's produced per megawatt hour versus a traditional coal-fired power plant. And so we were brought in to help with the engineers and Bechtel to understand how we could generate this as a CO2 reduction that could be marketed, because if all you got to do is open up the paper and look, coal's got a bad name right now, but it's 57% of our power generation in the U.S., and it's going to be that way for the next 30 years because nothing else is going to come up and in play. So we got to figure out ways to clean it out. So we were brought on board with them. We impressed them enough that they signed an exclusive license with us to form a company called C-Lock Technology, which now has sector development in quite a few sectors, and I'll talk about that a little bit. From this, we have now developed a relationship and a channel partnership with IBM to develop our software. And we are an automated software system, and our patent is based on that. It allows us to be very scalable, very large, and to go cross-sector. So we started with agriculture, but now we're in energy. We're looking at commercial and industrial sectors also, biofuels. Anything that has a life cycle type analysis, we can automate and run in a way, and with IBM's help on the back end, we can do it in a scalable enterprise-wide system. We were born as a company out of measurements. This is actually the tower in the experimental forest in the Black Hills that we set up and ran that started some of the initial CO2 and methane flux measurements that we did in the hills that led to some of the concepts that we can monitor and measure this in regional areas and at small scale to be able to determine this. So the history of us, we had interdisciplinary science teams. So we had from the School of Mines itself, we had civil engineering, atmospheric sciences, obviously geology and geological engineering, mechanical engineering, all rolling together, chemical engineering, all rolling together to talking about this, and rolling in SDSU and Montana State and others to try and figure out ways we could do this in a functional way, and came down to the understandings of it was going to be done with measurements and numerical models. Now, it's funny because we talk about this stuff, and I followed Rob a few times in these discussions. I'm one of the guys on the other end who uses that big screen to look at data. So we'll run our numerical models and actually pull some of that data to be able to visualize it on about an 18-foot power wall. So an 18-foot projected screen to be able to try and understand the relationships in a visual way that mathematically on paper might not necessarily fall out. So it's a nice interlinking of how some of these things work. So we came into being able to predict complex systems behaviors based on this modeling, and then being able to cross-check the data that's done at various scales, very spot local scales up to regional estimations using NEON sites or large-scale climate monitoring stations, one of which the Department of IAS and the school is trying to get centered in the Black Hills. The benefits for our system, which is now, it's the GreenCert system as we've gone to IBM and partnered with IBM, that's powered by the C-Lock process, which is our patented process. It gives us quality, speed, transparency, certainty of the results, and repeatability of those results at a low cost for volume and adaptability, because you set up the system, once you've input the data or have the hooks into the databases, for example, on the energy side, we touch and run the EPA continuous emissions monitor database, and we also pull instrumentation data from power plants specifically to be able to monitor the uncertainty and determine what a plant's output of CO2 emissions are. You couldn't do that without a large-scale backbone across the power plant, say Basin Electric or Duke Energy, being able to run that across all their plants so they can at one point at any time tell what their actual CO2 footprint is for production. The regions and the areas we're talking about in energy, power production, efficiency, audits and documentation, compliance and reporting. You guys have seen the news. CO2 legislation is somewhere here. All three of the candidates are for it. In fact, the McCain-Lieberman bill, which is the one that's in the Senate now, is estimated about a 50-50 chance of passing. And that's the most conservative of the greenhouse gas legislation bills are going to be pitched. If Senator Obama comes in, it's going to be Al Gore who's going to head his climate change policy. So you're going to see direct responses coming that way. So we are leading towards this. It was estimated we would see legislation 2012. Now they're expecting it 2010 or sooner. And so you're going to see a cap and trade or a tax type system to come in place. So we're looking at that with those guys. We're also leading into capture and storage, which is a big thing that's going on in North Dakota with Basin Electric. Just announced Antelope Valley Stations by Beulah. are putting in capture and storage systems. They're also talking about looking at other places where they're siting potential plants to do this and figure out how well we can do this. And then where we would come in is looking at that monitoring and being able to make sure we can monitor and protect for large scale leakage, which would be catastrophic, a catastrophic event for a release of CO2 that way, and being able to do risk analysis and monitoring and verification that that's still all in the ground. Commercial building energy conservation. Right now, if you change to low wattage bulbs, you get money back. You see the results in your electric bill. Well, the second thing about that is you're reducing the amount of CO2 generation off of that. But the hard part about that is you have to be able to differentiate what power is coming into your system to be able to say I've reduced this much CO2. Well, we partnered with a couple of other companies to try and develop technology to where you will be able to sit down and look on your bill and see what your CO2 reduction is truly based on the power that comes into your system. So when you buy renewable energy, you know you're getting renewable energy. These type of things. And right now that's very, very new and just being developed. And it's going to be important as cap and trade systems come in place to be able to vet and verify how things are being done. We're also looking and talking about green building development. So when you're talking about being able to build sustainably in a green building type environment, you've got to look at the entire life cycle, not only from the point of new development, where are all my vendors coming, what are all my bids are, how green actually are my bids, how verified are green are my subcontractors. All that information has to be handled into one database to make economic and political decisions that go forward. On top of the, if I'm renovating, do I renovate, tear down, or do I build green or do I restore green? All these economic factors come in. Our system can again, through the patent and the uncertainty analysis we have in place, the patent pending we have in place, is allowed to model that. It's a very robust, wide and broad system that has a lot of adaptability to a lot of different emerging markets. Environmental, same situation here for water quality trades and water quality issues. You can sit there and model on large scale what the potential is for catastrophic situations and water analysis risk for usage and profitability, all coming online and being looked at. Not quite there yet, but this is all emerging markets, and everybody's well aware we're in an absolutely water-constrained society in the West, and it's not going to get any better over the next generation or two as more people come into place and more demands come on our water supplies. How we do this, it's a web-based interface. For the agricultural side, you can actually go there, take a look at us, drive it, see what we do on the agricultural side, and get some information on the background side. We are a little bit different in that we're a peer-reviewed process, so we actually have published papers on our technology and how we do things to make sure that we're scientifically vetted, that what we're doing is accurate and representative. It's been a neat thing when we signed up with Evergreen Energy to form a partnership. One of the big discussions is they wanted to move us originally down to Denver and in their headquarters, and we coming back to what Karen said, quality of life and where we want to live, we jammed our foots down and said, no, you either take us here or you don't take us anywhere. And we've made a strong stand for that as a company. So we have a split company. We have some BD development work down in Denver with our parent company, but the majority of the science, R&D, development work, new project work is all based up out of Rapid. We have about 9 employees now. We're just going to keep expanding. We've already filled our space at the incubator, and so we're already looking at ways we can enhance off that. It's been wonderful because it's given us a good effective cost rate to get us up and running in a way that we have resources that we can direct in other directions than in leasing and everything else. So it's the perfect step up to get us rolling that wouldn't have happened. And we really do, want to see it here. Out of our 9 employees that are here, they're all local. Deadwood, 2 from Deadwood, all coming through the systems, graduating from the area, and we keep it that way. We found we get the best results and the best work with the work ethic that's developed out of here and a lot of the people that come to the school. It's just been a phenomenal thing. With that, I'm going to drop down to a promo video that explains a little bit more about, in a very, very high level, what we do and and the partnerships that we have in place. So.
The Earth is a framework supporting the vast architecture of life. From the smallest to the largest organisms, the tiniest to the tallest infrastructures. Most importantly to us, it supports the human race. All of our loved ones, our mothers, fathers, our sisters and brothers, all are vitally dependent upon the Earth's framework. Like the Earth, GreenCert is a framework. It is a web-based framework that enhances a company's efforts to measure and quantify its greenhouse gas emissions, also called GHG emissions. As new standards and regulations are put in place, companies find that qualifying their GHG can be both a cost center and like trying to navigate through a confusing maze. GreenCert helps to provide companies with clarity and cost management. This science-based solution is comprehensive and easily scalable. Very importantly, it can deliver results that meet and exceed standards and regulations as they continue to evolve. That is why 4 vanguard companies, C-Lock Technology, Evergreen Energy, Enterprise Information Management, and IBM, have come together in an unprecedented partnership to develop and deploy the GreenCert solution around the world. The 4 companies are working together to provide an important tool to take on the global climate challenge. Previously, climate experts have stated that in order to halt the buildup of carbon in the atmosphere, CO2 concentrations must be limited to 450 parts per million. Last year, the UN IPCC report found that in order to reach this goal, industrialized nations would have to cut emissions 80 to 95% by 2050 to meet the limit. Moreover, the world as a whole would have to reduce emissions by 50 to 80%. The GreenCert framework is a giant step forward in climate change management. It allows companies to ease into scaling up their efforts and to gradually adapt to evolving GHG requirements. What used to take months or weeks can be accomplished in days or hours with GreenCert. Let us introduce you to the core concepts of GreenCert. The GreenCert framework provides core functionality for data collection, processing, integration of existing systems, real-time and periodic reporting, data storage, and archiving. Most importantly, the GreenCert framework enables the quantification, the verification, the analysis of uncertainty, and the audit and compliance reporting for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, removals, avoidance, and carbon offset credits. These features allow the GreenCert framework to accurately quantify greenhouse gas emission reductions, removals, and avoidance, and certify these environmental improvements as carbon credits. Where other systems stop, the GreenCert framework continues. GreenCert then registers the client, ingests all greenhouse gas-related information that has been input either through data or field sensors, then calculates the greenhouse gas baseline footprint. From this greenhouse gas footprint, GreenCert will then calculate any reductions, removals, or avoidance as carbon credits, and in turn deliver those carbon credits as industry-standard C-Lock certified emissions reductions, CCERs, which will then be made available to your third-party verification process, and finally to various carbon markets and government reporting agencies. GreenCert is the only solution to provide a true turnkey system that encompasses and makes simple and efficient this entire process. Not only that, it enables a complete view of any organization's greenhouse gas contribution with up to the second accuracy. The GreenCert framework delivers on 3 core promises. 1. GreenCert provides a scientific and automated way to gauge and document your company's greenhouse gas management efforts. 2. GreenCert delivers high-quality, standardized greenhouse gas credits that are transparent, easily verifiable, reproducible, and scientifically defensible. 3. GreenCert is responding to the market's significant need for developing and deploying a solution that matches the scale of the global climate change challenge facing today's industrial, agricultural, and manufacturing companies. When IBM, Enterprise Information Management, C-Lock Technology, and Evergreen Energy Incorporated came together, they envisioned a framework. GreenCert arose from that vision, and today has the potential to change the way the world manages its greenhouse gas emissions. The Earth is a framework that we rely on as humans. Let us deploy a framework for you that you can rely on. and one that will keep business moving forward into the future and beyond.
So in a very generalized way, that's kind of what we do. We are a information management company that does large-scale greenhouse gas quantification, efficiency adjustments, and monitoring and quantification of these changes into a marketable credit solution, looking towards a cap and trade or a legislated market. And with that, I can take questions.
Patrick, thank you.
Yep.
Just a question. It talked about lowering greenhouse gases, a lot about companies, and I understand a lot is produced through companies, but are you having this conversation with municipalities, with counties, with the government entities to then try to mandate that some of these actions are taken?
Absolutely, absolutely. As of right now, the U.S. is a voluntary market unless you're in certain areas that are putting registries together. RGGI, which is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative in the Pacific Northeast. The Western Climate Initiative, of which we, as the state of South Dakota, are participants but not signatories yet. And I know Governor Rounds is actually working on developing his own also. So this is going to filter down to municipalities specifically that way for reducing, managing their greenhouse gas footprints across the board. And one of the we are talking to them because what we have is fleet applications managements. So and quantification in the commercial building sector for that. So you can actually quantify what that efficiency saving is in terms of a greenhouse gas reduction, not just a net energy savings. Where this is being produced and done in a cap and trade system, for example, in Alberta, we're up there starting to negotiate with Calgary, with other Edmonton, to start and talk about ways that we can do this in a cost-efficient, effective, large-scale way to allow them to manage their solution without having to continually hire independent third-party consultants to come in and do baseline footprinting and get a static report every time, to do an automated type system that gives them this in a very accurate and quick way.
I have another question.
Sure.
Do you see locally a role for us? I mean, or what role, or is there a charge for us? Is there a challenge for us?
There's a lot of charges that come out of this. It's whether you believe in climate change or not. I'm not here to argue the belief in anthropogenic or human-caused climate change. It's being we label ourselves responsible environmentalists and realistic environmentalists. So I still drive a truck. I live in my house up here over by Canyon Lake. I try and do things that are right for what we do. In terms of municipalities, until there's a cap and trade system, what you guys need to do is be the proponents of sustainable environmental living and doing it in the proper way. Whatever incentives that can be done with that, by being leaders and promoters of this kind of thing, of being able to show, as a city, we do this. One of the best and worst examples of that, of course, is Boulder, Colorado. It's one of the best examples because they're very progressive and they push very hard towards showing that they are a sustainable community. It rebounds back because sometimes they push so hard they lose benefits in one area that they hadn't intended on to get results in another area. And some of that has to do with cost. By switching over to renewable resources, all of a sudden they saw a marked generation cost that then came down on the back end that could have probably been handled a little bit differently. So it's again, responsible environmentalism and realistic environmentalism, and being a proponent for it and stepping for it. If cap and trade systems and things like that come in and you guys want to progressively look at this as an option and a development, or before that comes in, if you guys want to make a step forward and say, as a city, we really want to look at being, not carbon neutral maybe, but carbon reduced. This is the kind of system, or this is the kind of system that's going to need to be implemented on that large of a scale to be able to monitor everything through at one time to get accurate reporting and sensibility and sense. Now, are we the only company that's doing this? Of course not. I can tell you right now, Microsoft has a project out there also. Google has stuff that they're keeping underneath wraps, doing the same kind of things, very large scale, very enterprise wide. We have patents that allow us to get a little bit of a jump, or patents pending, sorry, that we have allow us to get a little bit of jump on how we do things and how we quantify. And having a partnership with IBM doesn't help that, doesn't hurt that either. But that's the kind of thing I would expect the city council to try and do and the city of Rapid City is to be, progressive. We're a community who is here for the quality of life and what we have out our back door, and for the opportunities that come here, and we want to make sure that those are sustainable in here, and this is one way we can do that.
My last comment will be thank you for sticking to your guns and not moving to Denver.
Yeah, I moved up here from Colorado, so I don't need to go back.
So the next part of that equation is then how do we get them from Denver here?
Well, that one's an interesting situation. In a lot of the reason they're in Denver, of course, is connectivity. You're in a business center. You have ease of routes, ease of transportation. I mean, at the point for me to fly down, we were commuting to Denver about every other week, and I was paying $1,000 a ticket to get to Denver every other week. It's not very cost effective, but we stuck to our guns and did it. But I can fly a red eye to and from Denver to New York or anywhere else for a couple $100. It's a cost factor when you look down at that and how that plays out for why they're still there and they're not up here. A lot of them would rather be up here, but it becomes a cost factor, and that's something that has to be juggled, with size and scale of the city, how you want to grow, plan, and you guys are all very, very well aware of that. So.
Patrick, thank you. We do have a question from Councilmember Karen Olson.
Yes.
Thanks. And my question is, thank you very much for the presentation. I just think this is very innovative science and very helpful in understanding what the Black Hills Business Development Center is doing. Without revealing anything that's really confidential, maybe Mr. Meyerhouse might address some of the conversation of growth in regard to the Business Development Center and how that might impact companies that are that are currently housed in the Black Hills Development Center. Because I know there's some steps that are taken that would grow some companies, and whatever you can talk about in regard to that would be helpful.
Sure, and obviously they all depend upon success of the mission that they're doing. But right now we have, there's 63 people in the Business Development Center total. We are planning to grow that by the end of this year to just under 100. And then we plan next year to grow another 30. That's just with the businesses that are there now or I'm talking to come in. That excludes, I've got 4 other companies that I don't have names for that will be coming as well. So that growth will be there. The thing that I'm trying to encourage with everyone in the communities in Rapid City and everybody else is let's keep in touch with these folks, because they're going to get kicked out of where they are. They can't stay there beyond 5 years, and they're going to need a place to be housed. Now, most all of them will probably, no doubt, stay here. There might be some that get purchased and for whatever reason can't stay here. There's going to be some that's not going to make it. I'm not suggesting these two are those, but who knows? When you start a business, they don't all get there. But at any rate, we need to start thinking about the next level of where do we take them, what do we do with them as they grow, because we really want them. So that's part of it. The other kinds of companies that we have coming, one is, as I've said, out of a production company for MEMSense, which is a sensor group. They're going to start with 40 people. Now, where my guess right now, they're depending upon a federal contract, that probably won't get started till early fall. Another company out of San Francisco, which is another offshoot of MEMS, technology. MEMSEN technology is sensors about the size of a quarter. They too are coming. They're probably going to start with about 20. Daktronics is looking at coming along as well. That's a way out yet, but they're talking about starting a research group here similar to what Evans and Sutherland have. So I'm expecting the business center to be full by the end of 2009, and that should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 companies, depending upon obvious square footage requirements of those. These next two coming in are taking it at 4,000 square feet a slice, so it doesn't take long to get that space used up. We've had some conversation with the foundation about looking at another one, because this one won't recycle, so we're going to have some void time, not a place to have them. So we need to look at that as well and see. There's a meeting going on right now that going from here, looking at some medical research side of the issue, and that may be an answer. So, and we'll see where that goes, because there is quite a bit of medical research going on that probably not everyone knows about either. It's not in the incubator now, but could be, or it could be in another one. So we'll see where that goes. That's, I know that's rambling a bit and not being very specific, but in this game, it's not, hard numbers are only there when you see them and you count them. So, any other questions? We really appreciate your time. We truly appreciate the help that you've been able to give us to get this build out done over this last year and a half, because through your help, we were able to help augment part of CELOC's build out, part of Evans and Sutherland's, and that was with the Economic Capture funds. We appreciate that very much.
Jim, Rob, and Patrick, thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Oh, I had one just wild deal. What we need to do is have Rob get the projector that improves video conferencing so that he doesn't have to fly.